I'm Myriam.
And I'm Elyse. Two friends bound by the love of books.
Taking on the world one chapter at a time. This is the Book Bound Besties podcast. Hey, Book Bound Besties! Welcome to the first bonus episode of Season 2 of the Book Bound Besties podcast, where we dive deep into your favorite books, have unhinged chats, and Elyse theorizes about what's to come because she hasn't read the book yet. Except this episode. Because, actually, no. This episode is the case. Well, you don't theorize. You haven't read the whole book.
Oh, yeah, no, I haven't. So this special bonus episode basically came about because we got an advanced reader copy of a book titled Till Death by Miranda Lyn. And we both really, really enjoyed it. Myriam finished it. I'm like halfway through. And we just keep talking about it to each other. And we thought, like, why not reach out to the author and see if she wants to come on the podcast? So we did. And she graciously said yes. So we have a really fun interview for you guys.
Absolutely. I am just loving it. Elyse and I are so delulu that we just shoot our shot. And you know what? I have to say that people have been really receptive. So listeners, Bookbound Besties, if ever you want something, just try and get it because odds are people are going to want to help you and be interested in whatever. I don't know. I just feel like you have nothing to lose.
At the beginning of this year, I saw a TikTok of a girl who said that her goal this year was to get rejected as many times as possible.
I love that.
And I was like, oh my God, like, why would you want to feel that? But then she goes into explaining that she's like, I want things in life. I'm going to just shoot my shot and see what happens. I'm going to ask for what I want. And there's probably going to be a lot of chances where people are just going to say yes. So why not?
Yeah.
So she kind of went forward with that mentality. And I think we've kind of adapted that type of mentality for BBB, and we're like, let's give it a shot. And what's the worst that can happen? Someone's just not going to respond or say no.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. We're going to get rejected this year
as many times as possible.
So our guest on this first bonus episode of Season 2 is Miranda Lyn, like we just said. She's the author of trending high fantasy series Theorizing and the Unmarked Witch. And I love her Goodreads bio that reads, quote, an idea sparked a buried passion within her to follow a dream and teach her children that anything is possible if you're willing to work hard for it. She is so cool. We loved our conversation with her, and I really, really hope our listeners are going to enjoy her and get curious about her upcoming book, Till Death, that comes out on April 23rd, 2024. Just a few book stats. She's got 8 books on Goodreads with ratings averaging 4.19 on 5 stars, which I think is pretty amazing. Yeah. And Till Death has a rating of 4.58 and hasn't even been released yet. So I think that's...
Yeah. This is just from a small pool of people who have been reading it. So I think it's just going to launch into the world and take over.
Absolutely. It's got a really cool magical assistant that we talk about later on. The female main character is awesome. She is badass like a lot of the books that we love, but she's also incredibly vulnerable and flawed. And there's just so much beautiful poetic writing. So before we get into the interview, here is the synopsis. Long ago, Requiem was plagued by war and abandoned by the gods. But death saved the suffering people, giving each soul 100 years of immortality. With that grace, he also sent 2 maidens, one of life for healing and comfort, and one of death, the only person in the world with the ability to kill. Generations later, the life maiden is missing, and Princess Deianira is nothing more than a trained weapon. A hunter, a murderer wrenched into death's dark court to have the name of her next victim seared into her palm. She is the enemy of this land, but when she's given the chance to bring peace through marriage and finally show her father's kingdom her worth, she is viciously tricked into marrying the wrong man, ruining the future of the damaged realm. Her only hope to give something back to the world is to find the missing life maiden. Now, eternally bound to her enemy and dragged into the dark burlesque show her new husband is bound to, she must fight to keep herself free and her heart, especially when she becomes the hunted.
And if that is not enough to pull you in, to make you want to read the book, I think this interview will.
I definitely think so. So enjoy. We are so happy to be here with Miranda Lyn, author of Till Death. Thank you so much for joining us on the Bookbound Besties podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here. Remind me, one of you, both of you read Till Death or no?
Yeah. So I finished it last night, and Elise is about 2/3 of the a third,
Half, let's say.
halfway.
Yeah.
Okay. But we're not going to talk spoilers, right?
We're not going to talk spoilers because we want to entice our listeners to read the book.
It's really hard to talk about this book and not talk about spoilers because the content, like there's so much.
There's so much that happens.
How do you sell a book this big and not go into like how we get to each of the steps? So
we will do our best.
Yeah.
So before we get started and talk about your writing journey and your career as an author, we just want to know a little bit more about yourself. So tell our listeners a little bit about who you are. We do know that you grew up smack dab in the middle of the US. So are we talking Midwest?
We are talking Midwest. Yeah. Yeah. I was born in Topeka, Kansas. That's not where I live. That's where I was born. And I'm not too far from there. I don't live in Kansas, but it's not too far from there. And I am a mom of 3 kids. My 2 oldest are grown and out of the house, which is wild. And my youngest is in 7th grade. And I'm married and I have a dog. My mascot for all the things.
Big puppy.
Not that interesting. Like I don't have, book people are a little bit introverted and I own that fully. I don't know what's cool about me.
No, that's great. I mean, so we are in Montreal, we're Canadian. And so I think we at least have in common the harsh winters and terrible weather.
Yes, we do have that in common. Yeah.
Okay, so you're a mom.
I am.
You're obviously more than that. You are a published author. So can you talk to us a little bit about your publishing story?
I can. I'm also a photographer and that full-time job. Now it's like a little bit more part-time because I put so much into being an author. But I had a client come to me and I've been a reader first. I've read my whole life. I absolutely love romantic fantasy and just fantasy stories in general. So she came to me to get headshots done. And I was just kind of asking her about her career. And she sent me her books and I read them. And I was so inspired because, if you meet someone that can do something that you've always wanted to do, it makes it a little bit more within reach.
Mm-hmm.
I read her books and I decided I'm going to just try this. I just want to see if I could write a book. Because when I was a kid, I wrote books and stories and things, like little things that kids do, not anything like on the scale of what I've done now. So I sat down one day, it was December 19th of 2019, and I wrote a 10-page synopsis of an entire trilogy. I was like, all right. I just told myself the story, like what would happen in this book. I had no inspiration going into it. I had no clue where it came from. I just sat down and wrote, and then it just worked out. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do this then. That's what we'll do. Because during the winter, because we do have such cold winters, I don't do a ton of outdoor photography. So it's like the perfect little pocket of time for me to see if I could write it. I wrote that first book in 4 weeks.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
Fast.
Breathed it. The entire trilogy was done in 3 months because COVID happened in 2020. And I had finished the first and the second book and I was into the third. And I kept telling myself, I'm going to have to stop this, go back to my everyday job and then come back into it. And then the world shut down. And so I got to finish the trilogy like at the beginning of 2020. And then I was like, okay, I wrote 3 books. What am I going to do with these? So I didn't have any intention of ever publishing them. I just wrote them to see if I could do it. When I started writing those books, it just captivated me. I lived in them. I breathed them. It was very, very all encompassing. I'm pretty sure there were days that I didn't shower. I got up and I just wrote. And then after that, I sent those books to that client of mine. We'd become friends by that point because I'd ask her questions and then she would ask me questions. And then it just kind of evolved. She's here where I live, obviously. So she read them and she was like, what are you doing? You are absolutely publishing these.
Oh, that's so nice.
I was like, no, I can't not. People can't have this. They'll judge me, And then she was like, let them, it's fine. So then I was like, okay, well, I guess then I'm going to do it. So then I hired an editor for all 3 books And then I just went through the motions of the things, I was learning as I was going. So I finished those books at the end of April 2020. It might have been like mid-May, maybe. I'm not sure. And then I did all the work on them, redrafted, did the developmental editing, sent them to editors all through the rest of 2020. So while the world was shut down, online resources were still available. So people that had to work from home, it was great for them because that was a job that they could do. So I sent my stuff to a couple editors, and then I found a cover artist that I absolutely loved. And she actually had these pre-made covers. And I was like, these are so beautiful, but I really want something custom. And so I went and contacted her, and then she made something custom. And I was like, no, those other ones just match the story better. We just have to do the other one. So we ended up doing 2 covers to land where we did with Fae Rising. And then I marketed clear through the end of 2020. And then January 4th, 2021, my first book published.
That's incredible turnaround.
Yeah.
Just been, we rapid released those. So it was, I think, like January, maybe beginning of March and end of April for that first trilogy to get them out. They were ready to go. They were just sitting there. We had spent the time marketing. So we put those out. And then in the meantime, I had been writing the 4th book, which was the spinoff with one of the characters. So I wrote that one while all the stuff with all the other one was happening. So that one was ready to go in October.
You're a machine.
Is that like always kind of your writing style? It just flows out of you. You sit down and you end up with a book.
It was before publishing. Now it's a lot different because you have a lot more voices in your head. Even if you don't want to hear the reviews or think about, I really do want to cater to my audience. I really do want to give you what I think you want to read, but I also don't want to do what everybody else has done every step of the way. So it's like finding the marriage between the two things. And I'm a heavy plotter. Like my friends think I'm crazy because I will tell myself the story in 3 paragraphs per chapter all the way through a book before I ever write the first sentence. So I know exactly what's going to happen the whole way through. And sometimes the characters sort of take me to wild places, but for the most part, I follow a plan. And that's the machine. Once I have my plot, then I can go forward with writing and I know what I'm going to write and where I'm going. And it makes it a lot easier for me because I have a terrible memory.
Yeah, but it's nice because you have a skeleton and then you can just build on it. And it's, I'm sure, a little bit less daunting than having to kind of keep moving forward as you go, forgetting maybe what you've already set up in the past.
Mm-hmm. And for me, I am more motivated by what I know is coming versus what I've already written, if that makes sense. So to me, I'm like, okay, this is the part. That's why if you read my books, there's chapter cliffies every time, because I know where I'm going in that chapter. It's always the build up to that chapter cliffy to go into the next chapter. So that's what motivates me to write the chapters. And that's why typically I can write them fairly quickly. Now, I will say this book, Till Death, took me longer to write. Well, she's very big, though.
A lot happens in her.
Yeah, there's a lot that happens. So because of that, that one was, I did actually write the majority of this book in 8 weeks. But I want to say there was some stuff, like there was time in between where I wasn't able to write. So it did end up taking me a bit longer to write this one, but it was still very quick, I think.
For sure.
Do you ever end up, as you're writing, having to deviate from your plan? Like, do you ever?
Yeah. If you've written strong characters, they don't let you drive the plot. 100%. I plotted out. I think I know where I'm going. I don't have characters that stray way off path, but they definitely go into places I don't want them to. And then I have to sit and figure out how I'm going to get them out of the burning buildings, so to speak. So
I love that.
That's so interesting. So I'm wondering now, you were saying how you wrote the book in 3 months, or the trilogy in 3 months.
Yeah.
And then you found editor, you found artists. Where are you going to find all of these resources?
actually just other, you make friends with other authors and you ask for recommendations and it's who they say. There's so many resources online. If you know what you're looking for, you can find it. You can find it. I definitely had more of a, I don't want to bother these people. I don't want to ask them questions. So a lot of stuff, I get questions all the time about like, oh, how do you do this? And how do you do this? And to a certain extent, I'm so happy to answer those questions because I know how much easier it would have made my life. But at the same time, all of those resources truly are online. You can find so much information on YouTube. It's wild.
For sure. For sure. We've learned so much in this podcasting journey from YouTube. YouTube has been a great teacher.
Absolutely. So. I even fell into, because we're on Book Talk and everything, I fell into like a lot of videos about publishing. And like, though I am not a writer, I find it fascinating, like just hearing about the process and like, I don't know, doing research for no reason.
Another career, Elyse, maybe?
It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
So.
I'm really connecting and loving the fact that you found a support in other authors. I love that they were generous enough to help you and give you advice or share their resources with you. We've had that a little bit with some other book podcasts who have given us just a glimpse into their experience and some advice and feedback. So I love the idea of paying forward based on your experience. I think that's really great.
Yeah. And I really do like fielding those questions because I think it's important that one of the things that I didn't realize at the time that I advocate a lot is that what works for one person doesn't work for the next. So when I started the journey, I really just thought I'm just going to like do what they're doing. You know, I'll just do the same thing that other people are doing and that's going to work out. It's going to be great. We're going to write all the books and sell all the books. And that's not the case. Everybody's journey is different. Everybody's story is different. And the way your path is always going to be different, even if you're trying to be similar to somebody else. Because there's so much that's not in your control. You don't know how it's going to be received. When you write a book, it's like the greatest thing to you, you know, but the readers are the ones that really determine the path of how things go. And that's what happened for me with Unmarked. So Unmarked is my witchy duology and people just loved it. It became a whole thing on TikTok, which I was so grateful for. And then it just ran and that was not in my control. Like, of course I would have chosen that, you know, that's what we hope for, but that's never something that I didn't even think it was going to happen. So everybody's journey is different. And I think that's just the most important thing to take away.
Absolutely. We were curious. So we got an advanced copy, like we mentioned, we got an ARC through the Realm archives. So we were wondering how you established that relationship and how that came to be.
Okay. Well, that is a great story. Sarah is the owner of the Realm Studios. So what had happened is I knew that I wanted to let me go backwards because I'm wordy and I like to tell stories, right?
Go ahead.
So when I released Unmarked, I did this huge Instagram games and we marketed for 9 months. And what we did is we took everybody that like wanted to play could go pre-order. And if they pre-ordered, they could choose their coven. And if they like registered their coven, we had a thing on the website to choose which coven you wanted to be in. And then my team were leaders for all the covens. And then your job was to recruit to your coven. And then I had them play games and earn points against each other. And then at release, we had this huge, like, which coven wins the coven trials, right? Which is, if you've read Unmarked, that's very on par for the way that the book goes. So it went really well. But since then, I've known that I want to market differently. I'd like to do things that are out of the box. I don't want to do the same thing every single time. I definitely, like, the games were amazing, but it was 9 months and it was strenuous and it was tough. So this time I thought, maybe I should just try like PR boxes and then do the largest ARC campaign that I can possibly put together. So a friend of mine that is an author, Melissa K. Rourke.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you were friends with her. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah. So we're best friends. Yeah.
That's so sweet.
I went to her and I was like, listen, I really need to put together, I'm going to do PR boxes. And here's like the thing. I'm looking at this and I'm looking at this. And I kind of gave her sort of what I was looking at. And we just kind of buddied it out to see what worked and what didn't. In the meantime, Sarah actually works for Melissa.
Mm-hmm.
I'd reached out to Sarah and I said, I really want to do PR boxes this time. And she said, well, I'm not doing PR boxes yet because I'm just a little baby and I'm just getting started. And that is a big undertaking. And there's a lot of great options out in the industry right now, though. So she gave me some information on kind of who to choose and what she thought. And then that just bloomed into a friendship. And then it turned into her, opening up the Realm archives. She read Till Death. She actually gave a quote for the book.
Mm-hmm.
It's the last on the book. And so when she announced that she was going to do the Realm archives, I was like, I would like to be number one. And then she said, okay, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to give the book to everybody. So that just kind of made our relationship bloom. And that's how we started. And then we went through and I ended up with multiple PR companies. We went with a PR company to sort of do the box that we wanted to do. And then we ended up doing it a little bit differently because I like to do things different. So our PR boxes, there were 5 different themes. So it wasn't just everybody got the same thing. Everybody is currently getting, because they haven't all arrived yet. They're getting different themed boxes. So kind of the same, but a little bit different. And then the massive ARC campaign that we did. But that's how I really threw the K. Rorick, and then just picking her brain until she was annoyed by me. And then we became friends.
That's awesome. I love that. I love the idea of the games, though. That is so interesting and unique and creative. That's awesome.
It's fun that you're just like constantly keeping it fresh and creative. And like, I think that's only going to propel you forward even more,
And I'd even seen on social media a few of your boxes so far. I didn't realize there were 5. I thought there were 3. That's amazing.
Yeah, they haven't all. I think the last 2 themes have just been shipped. Okay. So I think we'll start seeing those soon. But yeah, it's a really fun. I just want to do things that are a little bit different. It doesn't have to be wild. Like the games were wild. That was a whole production because we did games at least 2 a month. Sometimes we did 4 in the month, and we had to keep score and everybody had to save things to their highlight. And then we had to track everything. It was a huge undertaking for 9 months, but it did what it needed to do and really accelerated that book for me. And then now we're at Till Death, and it was like, I didn't have to do as much because that book did so well, not because of me. Just because of the story that was in the book and because people read it and they took it and they did the things. I marketed for 9 months, sure, but if it's not a good book, it doesn't matter. People get it and then it deflates. And that's not what happened. It went well beyond what we even anticipated happening. And I really hope that's the case for Till Death, but we'll see.
Well, if the Goodreads reviews so far are any indication, I am sure Till Death will perform very, very well.
I don't read my reviews, so I have no idea what Goodreads looks like.
They look great.
Yeah. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, that's really all you need to know.
Perfect.
Okay, so we've been alluding to your upcoming release, Till Death, quite a few times. And our listeners will have heard the synopsis in our intro. So why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on the inspiration of the book?
Oh, this is a good question. This book used to be very, very different. When it first came to me, there were certain plot points that I knew were going to happen, but it wasn't originally a gothic romance vibe situation, which this is romantic fantasy. It is not a fantasy romance, which means that there's a lot of story. There is a very clear romantic thread through the whole thing. It's 71 chapters. We do meet the main love interest within the first, before chapter 10. And he's pretty consistent throughout. So we do have that. But the original storyline was actually about genies. And there were like keepers of the realm, and they were trying to hide the genie lamp. And it became where the main character was a genie and she didn't know it. And there was another man that stole her lamp. It was a whole thing. And then I was really, really worried about doing anything that would be offensive. And whether we like it or not, if we're going down the genie road, unless we completely change the footprint of that, it's very easy to land in a space of cultural appropriation. And I just didn't want to go there. So I sat with it for a few weeks, and then I really got to know the main character, and she swept the story away. Like, it came from the characters, because that's not originally where I was going with the book, if that makes sense.
That's cool. So your main character, she was always part of the story. And then you just...
She just used to be a genie, and now she's a death maiden. So I don't know how we got there, but that's where we landed.
That's amazing.
Doesn't matter as long as she's in the story, because she is so cool. Yeah. I love her so much. I love her vulnerability, her strength, her wit.
Yeah, she has a very wide spectrum of emotion and a journey to take. She's not all of one thing. Sometimes you read books and you're getting that badass character, but that's who they are. Like, they're bad. But this is more, she is vulnerable, and she knows it, and she hates it, and yet like through the journey of that, and so she is a very interesting character. I'm trying to work on the next book now, and my brain is just like, this is Deianira. I need to, not this next character. Deianira needs to leave me. So I think I might need to write the more Deianira chapters before I can move forward with the next book.
We wouldn't be mad about
we would
that.
not be mad about that at all. Give us all the Deianira and the male main character you can get.
They're good. Did you guys? Okay, so one of you has finished and the other one hasn't.
Yeah.
Did you, Myriam, did you read the bonus chapter?
The bonus chapter being the male main character's perspective?
Yes.
I have not.
Oh, you got to go read that.
I will. I 100% will.
It's your thing.
I know. I love a bonus chapter. I was thrilled.
You love male.
And I love the male. I love the male POV. And the chapter that is the male POV, I know is going to be delicious. Yes. Like, I know it. But I just wanted to stew in the warm fuzzies a little bit longer before I went back to that point in time, if you get what I mean.
Oh, totally. Because the way it's like, the ending is so like sweet, it really, really is. And the male main character chapter is from a point that happens before all hell breaks loose, like as all hell is breaking loose, basically. So 100%, I get it. But you do have to.
We'll send you a message once it's read. I'll let you know what I think, and probably gush endlessly, because I am a hopeless romantic. I love the love part of romantasy, fantasy, romance, romantic fantasy, whatever combination it is. As long as there's romance in there, you have me sold.
So one of the things we really loved about the world is the magic system and like the whole concept of like a death maiden and everything. So what was your inspiration for that?
That is a good question. I don't know. I don't know how it changed. I really don't remember. I think I just really wanted, you know what it is? I had my genie in my brain, right? And I thought, you need to change it into something that's not going to be offensive, but still is pretty badass. And to me, I thought, I'm going to write another assassin, because in my first series, Theorizing, Aura is also she's not really an assassin, but she's like trained to be one. And I really wanted to write like the legit assassin. And then it just spiraled, and it was like, what you just sit there and you ask yourself, what if this and what if this? And you see how far you can twist your brain, right? Until you're like taking notes like a mad woman, because you're like, wait, how did we get here? What has happened? And that's where it all started, where it was, the setup that happens, the catalyst where I needed the most potentially ruthless, dangerous person. And the most dangerous person that you can write is an assassin in a world of immortals. Everybody thinks they're going to live for 100 years, except if this one person comes in contact with you, she can kill you. So to me, I thought, this is so badass, but then how do we make her vulnerable? Like, how do we make her more human and break that down? Well, what if we take away her choice? What if she doesn't get to choose who it is and it's a command of her? Well, who's going to command an assassin more sweetly than death himself, right? So that's where she came from. That was like the stair step of how we got to Deianira.
It's amazing. I mean, you find out a lot of that within the first few pages. And I was reading those first chapters and I was like taking a bath and enjoying myself. And I literally, like, as soon as I ran out of the bath, I like went to tell my husband about it. I'm like, this is so cool. And like, she's a death maiden. And then like the names appear. And anyway, so I explained the whole thing to him and he was just like, oh, cool.
This is very common. We subject our husbands to what we're reading because we just need someone in the immediately to just vent to. I don't even know. Like we are people who love books so much and feel so deeply whatever it is that we're reading that we just need to share it.
Talk about it
right away.
I'm the same way. I really go to my friends though, because my husband's not a reader and he doesn't get it, but he actually is listening to the audiobook of Till Death.
Ooh.
And it's the very first book that he's reading and he really likes it. And so I'm really excited about that because the audio, you guys,
we need to get our hands on it.
Yeah.
It's check out my Discord leader.
Okay. So not only does this magic system have a death maiden who's commanded to murder, essentially assassinate, not only does this world have 100 years of immortality, but we also have magic wielders and non-magic wielders.
Yes. The magic wielders are actually far less common than those that use magic. But, the story is surrounded because of the premise of the story, right? So we can dive into that a little bit without spoilers. In this world, there are 2 magic users that have the ability to bind people to them. So it's almost like Ursula from The Little Mermaid. I'll do you a favor, owe me a favor kind of thing. And you become bound and entrapped. And there's a lot of nuance with that. So with this, because they can bind people to them, they are naturally trying to collect those that can do magic because that makes them the most powerful. So one of the characters, the maestro, owns a burlesque show, a dark burlesque show. And his goal in life is to collect all the magic wielders to create the greatest show on earth. Except that he really, really, really wants Deianira because what better show than death on his stage in a world full of immortals? So he's been hunting her whole life and she's been trying to avoid him. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
It's just, you could even go further and not spoil because so much happens in this book. It is so action packed. I mean, I told Elyse, I thought that the first half of the book was exciting. The latter half of the book, it could have been like 2 or 3 books. There was just so much.
It really could have, except that it's missing. There are key elements that a story needs to have in order to be its own standalone book. And had I done, it's 3 parts. Had I done the first part, the second part, and then the third, or however I'd done it, that overarching story wouldn't have worked.
That is true.
It had to be the way that it is, which is why it's a longer book, but it is a standalone, which is, guys, we need standalones in our lives with fantasy romance or romantic fantasy because we are not seeing a ton of those unless they're the little ones that we love and then it's over so fast, so this is like a full meal for that. Really, that's what I'm saying. Before we started this interview, we talked about spoilers and what we wanted to say and not say. And it's so hard because there's so much and it's delicious. It's like we haven't even scratched the surface of the things. They're just like these little seeds that we're planting because so much happens in the book, but we'd never have time to go through all
for sure. For sure. So just kind of piggybacking off what you're saying about the standalones, having a standalone that is in a given world or with a given set of characters that follows a different character in the group is very common in the romance genre.
Yes.
But it's also something that you're introducing here with this series.
Maybe.
What do you mean?
Sorry, girls. No questions on that.
Okay. So we will just move right along.
No, there is something big that happens at the end of Till Death that leads us into the next book. And we don't know that journey. We have no clue where that journey takes us. And I will give nothing away for that. So, but it does, true to what you're saying, potentially we do follow the next character. We do know who the character is. It is a character that we've seen in this book. Beyond that, I cannot confirm or deny anything.
Okay.
Well, we'll just have to wait patiently for book number 2.
Yeah.
Solid. I like it.
I mean, at the rate you write, shouldn't be that long. So, right?
I don't know.
Right?
Don't put pressure on me. There's no pressure here.
Okay, sorry.
No. It's so funny. So many authors are like, oh, all of our readers are like dying for our next book, but like, no pressure. And we're just like, no pressure.
Yes. Where's the pressure button? We're pressing it.
Yeah. But that's what happens when you fall so in love with a world and a set of characters and you're just dying to know the fate of, I mean, the way you left it off for this character that book 2 will be following, the anxiety levels are very high.
I know, but that's the thing is we don't even know that until the very end of the book.
Yeah.
You know, the book really does round off Deianira and her male love interest's story.
Mm-hmm.
So very sweet at the end. We feel fulfilled. And then there's just like this tiny big hook at the end that's like, oh, we should read the next book.
I need to read faster.
Yeah, you definitely need to read faster.
Because we have this amazing found family. If you read my books, that is one thing that's very important to me. The side characters always want to steal the show. Even in the next book, I know who the side characters are and I love them so hard right now. And I can't even pick a favorite like side character through all my stories because they come through so strongly for me. And I love to build that relationship. And one thing in Till Death that we don't see a lot of is, you know, you get your slow burn in romance. There's a slow burn in friendship here. And especially with one specific character, their relationship starts out real hot and then slowly transitions into something that's like almost deeper than them starting out as friends because you kind of know this history of what they've been through. And that was a challenge with a standalone book to create the world and make it so it wasn't super info dumpy, to make sure that there was stuff happening on every single page through every single chapter, and to not only do the slow burn romance that we did, but also the slow burn found family. So it's just all the things.
Mm-hmm. That's like checking all my boxes. Like found family is one of my number one. Like I work in theater and television and stuff, and it very much has a found family dynamic. And like, so that has always been very important to me. And also side characters. I tell Myriam all the time, like I love a main character, but when they are supported by a crew that is like a solid side character, it's just, it's the best. They always end up being my favorite.
Exactly.
So yeah,
she is. That's why I just like grabbed her right away because I know that Elyse, the side character, has a really big place in Elise's heart.
Yeah.
For book 2, I know you can't tell us too much, but are any of the side characters for book 1 going to make an appearance? Okay,
That's a great question that we are not answering.
Perfect.
Okay.
Well, we do know one. At the bare minimum, there's a child involved that it's not her child, but we know that she has to come into play somehow in the story because of and where we leave it. We'll just say that.
Okay. We will accept that.
So we were wondering going into it, if you had some non-negotiable elements that you knew you wanted to write about in this series of books or in this book?
Other than found family, because you just said
Yeah.
found family is your number one.
Yeah. So I am an enemies to lovers kind of girl. I like if I could just write that on repeat, I will, because
We will read it.
I love the transition. I love to watch. Like, I'm not a friends to romance kind of writer. I don't know friends to lovers. It's not my thing. I'll read it totally, but when I'm writing it, I want you to hate each other. Somebody's getting stabbed. We're 100% like not friends right now. Even in Unmarked, that was enemies to lovers in a different way, because in Unmarked, they were true enemies, even though they weren't hating each other. Because of their history, they were established enemies before the crossover. Until Death, it's very different because they become established enemies and they hate each other. And we really get to see that before we see any kind of transition. So I think for me, if I'm not plotting an enemies to lovers book, I'm not as like entertained by it, because I need the snark and I need them to be mean and I need them to I need to love their grit a little bit. So for me, that's one thing that I really want to have in my stories.
Yeah, I love the tension.
The passion.
It's just so
the passion between these lovers in this book. Unparalleled.
I know. The thing is, I love the tension because that's also why I'm a slow burn girly, because I want it to burn before we get there. And some people will say, oh, maybe it's too slow. I don't care. Then the book wasn't written for you, because I wrote this true to slow burn, the timing, but that doesn't mean that the burn is not there. The burn is there.
The burn burns.
Oh, yeah.
From the beginning, almost, we experience that clear through. So it's the buildup to the relationship that gives me all the life. Like, it's my favorite thing.
That's so awesome. So, like you said when you were introducing yourself, you're a mom.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just wondering, I mean, we're both married, but no kids. How do you, and we both are having trouble balancing
life.
How are you balancing what is surely an extremely demanding endeavor, writing a book, and especially because you write a book so quickly, it must be incredibly intense, with the challenges that come with raising a family? Granted, I know you said your children are a little bit older, but I still talk to my dad every day. So
well, I've got, a seventh grader, and then my two oldest are gone now, but they weren't in, they're just freshly out of the house.
Okay.
So for me, everybody was home in 2019 when this whole journey started, and through 2020, and they've just recently moved. So it's been a struggle for balance, because I also do own another business. And so I've had to just figure it out, what works for me. My husband is very, very supportive, and I'm laughing because if he heard me say that, he would be cheering himself on right now. But,
no, we love that. It's so important to have a good support system. And Elyse and I talk about it all the time, especially in Elyse's career, being artistic. And I'm sure you can say the same thing. There's probably lots of ups and downs, and you need to have a good cheerleader and safety net there for you.
That's true, because this is an artistic journey, the same, it's maybe not the same as being an artist, but because it comes from a creative place, we have to write and do and plot and plan when we have inspiration. And that's 3 a.m. or, 11:45, or there's like a wide spectrum of times and different things that inspire us to do different things. And it is really hard. I am a moonlight writer. I love to write when my whole family is like tucked in and it's very quiet in my house, but everybody's gone during the day now. And it's not my time to write. It's just still not. So I do a lot of my admin stuff during the day, a lot of my marketing, and I'll do most of this, like, get this done stuff, so that by the time that I have fed my family and everybody's kind of in their zones, I'm like, see ya. And then I can go write. And that just comes from really being supported by my family.
That's awesome.
Have your kids read any of your books?
No. No.
Because they have no interest, or because you don't want them to?
I wouldn't care. I think it might be a little bit awkward because they have spice in them, but I just don't like my youngest, obviously she's too young to read them. I wouldn't let her read them. My oldest two, Emma's in college, but she's more of a Nicholas Sparks kind of girl.
Okay.
Not her jam. And then my oldest, she lives in her own place, but she is just more of a thriller horror kind of reader. So it's mostly just about what they prefer to read. But they do things for me. They do support me. They do follow me on social media. They share my stuff. They're really, really sweet about it. They'll send me TikToks and things of hey, this author did this. And I'm like, it's just fun because they care, but it's not their jam.
It's cute that they're helping with the PR side of it, though. That's great.
That's really cool. So if you are a night owl for productivity, let's say, what does a typical day look like for you?
All right. So it depends on the day a little bit. So if it's a writing day, it looks like staring at my computer until I pull my hair out. No.
Cool.
I do typically try to write 2,500 words a day when I'm in writing zone. I'm not currently because I have Readers Take Denver coming up this weekend and my book comes out in 7 days and I can't get out of the headspace of prep and be ready and that kind of stuff. But traditionally 2,500 words a day is my jam. So if I can write 1,000 words in the morning and then get anything that I need to do with my other business or whatever, and then save 1,500 words for nighttime, that's my best day. It doesn't always happen, but that's what I go for. Sometimes I write 4,000 words a day. It just really depends on where the inspiration is. I usually do go to the gym in the morning before I start writing and just to kind of think about where I'm going and how I want to work it out. And I sort of test the waters with some of the characters and see, how are you going to respond when I dip you in this little pool or whatever, but that's the typical day. And then I pick up my daughter from school, come home, cook dinner, go over homework if we need to. And then she goes on about her life. My husband comes home, we eat dinner, and then I come back up here to my library. And this is where the magic happens.
Do you have a favorite and least favorite type of scene that you write or to write?
I do not like writing smut.
Oh, okay.
I don't like it. I like to read it. I like it to be in the books, but it's takes away it's not fun for me because I'm where would his leg be? When you start breaking it down that way, it's just not as sexy and fun to do, And also I think that doing vanilla things takes away some of the fun as well. So I like to do different things. If you've read, this is a little spicy probably, but if you've read Unmarked, the first book, there's an icicle that gets used for a certain scene. There is a very good library scene in Fate and Flame. In Tides and Ruin, that is mermaids. Well, it's a siren and a merman, but yeah. So
curiosity.
Yeah.
I like to do different things, but but the thing that I love to write the most is probably the sad stuff.
Really?
I love it. Oh yeah. Can I make them cry? That's my goal. If you've read my books, any of my books, I have one goal and that's the goal.
Well, I told Elyse this morning, I teared up a few times.
Yeah, I haven't reached those points yet, but I am a crier when I read. So I for sure, if that's what you're telling me, I will for sure cry.
Oh, you will I will be really, really surprised if you don't cry. Yeah.
For me, I love to read books where I do go through a journey emotionally. I like to close the book and feel something, and it's sort of the evisceration of your soul along the journey and then it getting put back together. That's what makes a book amazing to me. Mm-hmm. So that is what I try to emanate in my own stories. I want you to feel something. And that's what it's about. It's about finding pretty words, but it's also about dragging you along the journey.
Well, I can definitely attest to the fact you will feel probably nearly every emotion reading this book. I was angry. I was anxious. I was sad. I was scared. I was happy. I was heated.
Heated.
Pretty much everything.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you felt all the things because that is my one goal. That's truly is my one goal with the book. I want you to close the book and like have to take a breath.
Well, there you go. That's why I wasn't in the headspace to read the bonus chapter yet. I needed to take a second, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're almost out of time. I think we only have about 10 minutes left. So I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I know you were squeezing us in today, and thank you very much for that. Before we let you go, is there anything that you'd like to plug? You mentioned a Discord channel before.
Yeah, I do. I have a pretty active Discord channel. We've got a lot of stuff going on over there all the time. For the rest of the month, we have authors coming in to do author spotlight days almost every day while I'm gone for Readers Take Denver. We don't have anyone coming in. And obviously, release day, we're doing a release day party. But we have, who do we have left? I know we have Charissa Weeks coming in on the 30th. We have Chloe C. Penuranda coming in, Vanessa Razanen, and Coldy. We've had a really great month of authors coming in. They come in, they get their own thread, and then they just do giveaways and play games and introduce themselves. And so if you want to come on over to Discord, even if it's not April anymore and you watch this way later or listen to it, we certainly will have something else going on at the time. Everybody over there is really enthusiastic, and it's just a great place to get recommendations on books and hang out and do fun things. So I do have Discord. I also do have TikTok. I post a lot of content. Probably the majority of my social media content is on Instagram. Don't ask me why. It's just where I started and where I built, and that's that. What else do I have all the things.
What's your handle? For the listeners,
we'll add everything into the description, the episode description also, but
they're all the same. It's at author Miranda Lyn. All of my social medias have the same handle.
Perfect.
And Lynn has one N, not two.
And a Y.
Yes, Lyn. Here.
Yeah.
Look at
there you go.
Yeah. There we go. Isn't that such a beautiful beautiful book.
We should show the book for YouTube.
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely.
Please.
Because it's so stunning. And
it's really beautiful.
I poured so much into the design of this book that it's kind of wild. I knew that I wanted to hire Virginia Ellen to do the map. Virginia Ellen is the map maker of the stars, you guys, if you don't know that. She's done Sarah J. Maas. She did the Crescent City map. She's done tons of like Bridget Kimmer and Carrie Maniscalco, Jay Kristoff. Who else? Stephanie Garber, she's got a ton. She worked with all of them. So for me, I was like, that is my one thing that I know that I really, really want. And then I spiraled and I got all the other things I really wanted to. I will show you the map.
Yeah, it's so incredible. It's very detailed. The world is essentially 2 cities on either side of a river.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
For our audio listeners. And the book is a gorgeous, deep red color. Yeah, we've got a female and a male top of their faces. I don't know what you call this.
Eyes.
These are eyes. We have those on our faces too.
Yeah. Well, there's like a bit of nose in there too. That's why. Ooh.
Gorgeous.
That you haven't read that scene yet.
No, I have not.
It's a great scene.
So this artwork for the dust jacket or for the naked cover is done by Tony Viento. And then I have the hands artwork. I'm just going to show one of them. Maybe I'll show 2, but so there are 3 parts to this story, and each in the physical book, part 1, part 2, and part 3 pages all have custom artwork done. So Daenerys' hand with chaos. And then part 2 is, well, I can't find it, but it's in here. I love the part 3 artwork, so I'm going to show that one. We also have a second map, and we have, that's part 3.
Wow. Okay.
The artwork is so I'm going to need to get myself a hard copy just to have like the beauty of the book.
I know this is weird to say, but I went with body parts on purpose. So like that, and the hands, all intentional because, you know, if you are morbid and you think about it, it makes sense for the, you know, the story. But, and then I had custom chapter headings done by Lila. So here is the chapter 1.
Yeah, it's
and
really
this would be
pretty.
chapter headings. And then I don't know if I can really show without spoilers the rest of it. But just know that it's like, I'm just going to like, whoop. That's 3. There's 3 different ones in there. So all of the artwork and all of the little details. And it does also have the title of the next book in it, as well as
beautiful.
That's in the ebook.
This is in the ebook.
Yeah.
Yeah. And was in the ebook arc. It is not in the standard ebook.
Oh, really? Oh, I feel special.
The arc readers got a little something special.
Yeah, that's so awesome. It definitely, for our listeners who are not watching this on YouTube, definitely I am an ebook reader, as our listeners know, but just getting this glimpse of the added kind of finesse of the physical copy. Thank you. Yeah, the physical copy, it's definitely worth it to move your little body to the bookstore.
Yes.
And get yourself a physical copy, because it's
stunning.
I knew the book was going to be expensive, because indie authors we have a huge, like a different price margin than trad pub authors do. And because of that, because of the size of the book, I knew it was going to be expensive. So I really wanted to make those dollars worth it for the readers and putting the attention into those details, because I could have just not, and it could have just in book, and it wouldn't have changed the price of the book because of the margins that we have to work within. So it was really important to me to make a pretty hardcover, and that's what we did.
Well, you've definitely achieved it.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
We just wanted to thank you so much for joining us today. Like, everything you've said is as poetic as your book. So it's been really amazing having you.
That's so
I've
kind.
highlighted so many passages. I was telling Elyse, like, oh my God, that male main character. Can he just speak beautiful words? Thank you so much for your time, and best of luck in Denver this weekend. And with the release of your book next week, we will be following along and sharing our unhinged book review. And
we're going to spam our
we're
followers.
We're going to spam our followers. We're really going to do our best to get as many readers into the story, because it's an incredible world.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really, really lovely. Thank you.
Have a good rest of your day.
Bye, guys.